Hi, I'm Sofia Song, Head of Research at StreetEasy. We're at the JW Marriott Essex House to talk with Peter Bazeli, a Senior Vice President with the national real estate consulting firm, the Weitzman Group. Based in New York, Peter consults on new developments across the country, and in recent years has consulted on many of New York's highest profile new projects. When advising or strategizing on the development of a new project, what are the economic and demographic trends and findings you're looking for?
Sure. All of that sets the context for whether a project is likely to be successful or not. And so it's always important to pay attention to those. From an economic standpoint, we're always paying attention to employment growth in the types of employment sectors that are likely to fuel the demand for a particular project. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's all Wall Street jobs, okay? It could also be manufacturing jobs if we're building affordable apartment communities in a suburban area. And so we're looking at where the growth is by sector. And we want to see a decline in unemployment rates, or at least an overall stable, relatively low unemployment rate. We want to see stability in the labor force, so that we know that there's a solid and diverse economic backbone to the location where we're developing. The demographic variables, we want to see household growth. We want to see growth, or at least stability. If it's a very dense urban market, there tends to be very low rates of growth versus suburban areas. We want to see growth or stability in the segments of the market where we're targeting the product. So if it's young professionals, we might be looking at households that are aged between 25 and 34, earning above $100,000 a year. If we're building condominiums, for example, in metropolitan New York. And so those types of trends we really track closely when looking at the viability of a project.
When considering projects like large-scale projects like Hudson Yards, in contrast to an infill project, in the middle of a block somewhere in the West Village, how are those two types of projects? How are they different in terms of how they're conceptualized and how they're developed?
Sure. Well, I mean, two very different types of real estate developments. A smaller boutique project that's in a neighborhood is a much simpler development program because you have very specific development constraints. You know really what you can build, and ultimately it's straightforward. So that type of a situation really is very reliant on market positioning and product positioning. How do we really create a personality for this smaller building that needs to be characterized in some way for it to be attractive in the market? How does it stand out and differentiate itself if it doesn't have scale? If it can't be as readily noticed as a very large residential or mixed-use building. In contrast, a project like Hudson Yards, which is a fantastic success story for Manhattan, is a mix of uses on site. First of all, it's a very complex project because you have all sorts of infrastructure issues, and the phasing of the development becomes paramount in terms of the way you build the site out over time. But there's a mix of uses on the site that are synergistic. You have office employment, which drives demand for residential on the site. And of course, both of those drive demand for the retail that will be developed. And so creating an atmosphere for each one of those uses really creates an overall development that's compelling. A larger project, it's much more important to make sure that you're paying attention to what's happening on the site in each phase when you're occupying space with either residential or commercial, so that it feels successful, it feels populated, it feels like it has the sense of place that you've designed for it. And so it's a very different set of tasks to really conceptualize a project like that, because so much more of it has to do with timing and the phasing of what happens on the site over time and how the different uses relate to each other.
Thanks so much for watching, and be sure to check back for more StreetEasy videos featuring Peter Bazeli.